last movie of the evening is a new movie. It's actually a body horror called The Substance. I would say this movie has all the body parts in the right spot.
We have The Substance, which is a relatively new movie. A lot of people may not have seen it. We're going to talk a little bit about this movie, non-spoiler, and at the end of this section of the review, we'll talk some spoilers.
Yes, and directed by the great Carly Harper, who directed one of my favorite movies of 2018 called Revenge. It's very bloody, it's very violent, it's very shocking. The Substance is a special kind of movie. I love it. What did you think?
Special is the word for it, yes. Disturbing is another word for it. Wild, I think that's how I've described it to a number of people. This is a movie you want to talk about. Like, after you see this, you want to tell other people, especially people who enjoy a good body horror movie, but it's such a wild ride. The story is about an actress whose career is starting to fade. She had a lot of success in the 80s and 90s, and she's now kind of relegated to doing a fitness TV show. It's very popular. She's well known for it. She's at that stage in her career where the execs want to move with somebody younger. They want to move on from her. And so that's where the story starts, is with her. The actress is played by Demi Moore, kind of returning to the silver screen after many years of not really seeing her in much. And this is like a tour de force return to the screen.
The movie stars Demi Moore, and it's basically about Demi Moore. Until it isn't. Until it goes full body horror,
Then
sci-fi.
it's about Bruce Willis?
Oh!
This part is not acting, what we're doing right now. You might be, but we're just selling the film now.
I love this film.
Oh, yeah.
It's also starring the great Margaret Qualley, who, if you didn't know, her feet starred in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I think she's been in some other things as well. But she is naked in this movie, very, very naked.
Does it star more of her ass or her face?
I think her boobs, her ass are first, and then her face, but a lot of crotch shots. Both great actresses, and both do a great job. It's such a strange movie because it's not a psychological horror, it's a body horror. All this is really happening. And that's what makes it so scary, and that's why it belongs in this category, because John, I would put it up there with The Fly as far as body horror goes. It's not as gross, like The Fly, I can't watch The Fly. It's too gross. To the extremes is what I mean, like what happens to these people and how they end up looking, and the scares come from your own inner fears of like, oh my God, like, do I really care how I look? And that's the cool thing about this movie, and that's what the director was trying to say. What is the extent you would go to keep yourself looking young?
I like to watch a lot of stuff about who's going to get Oscar nominations. So somebody mentioned Demi Moore might get an Oscar nomination for this movie called The Substance. That's the first thing I heard about it. Not necessarily that it was an amazing body horror. I really want to see this movie. I heard it's a body horror. Let's check it out. Little did we know that we're actually going to see the first film in roughly 40 years to put itself on the pedestal next to The Fly and The Thing in the realm of being the now three best body horror movies ever to grace the screen.
Yeah, this is a newer movie, and we don't do that often here on The Mixer, but this movie just really defines this category. And when John pulled out the eyeball that said body horror, we heard this movie was coming out, we're like, let's do it. So Demi Moore, I love her. People started talking Oscar. Ooh, well, I don't know if I'd go that far, but boy, does she put herself out there. And man, does she look amazing still. And you know, she's naked a lot too. Let's not forget that. Let's give her due. I've always thought she was a good actress. When people start yelling Oscar, you always have to consider why are they doing that? Is it because of the ballsy performance, or is it because of the performance itself? And she does spend about an hour of this movie without hardly any dialogue.
That was a part that, for me, the performance wasn't necessarily coming alive early on in the film because she was so quiet.
It does at the end, though.
And so I was a little bit like, I'm not feeling the whole Oscar buzz, but clearly she's being fearless and bold with this performance, and the fact that she hadn't been doing films for so long to come back with this kind of performance. Later in the film, there are some standout moments. About halfway through, I guess, is like the standout moment for her. It's a scene that reminded me of the scene in Swingers where he keeps calling the girl back and leaving messages on her machine.
Hi, Nikki. This is Mike. Hi, Nikki. This is Mike again. 213-555-4. I just got out of a 6-year relationship, okay? Hi, Nikki. This is Mike. Could you just call me when you get in?
Mike?
Nikki!
Don't ever call me again.
So after Demi Moore is fired, she is offered this substance that would change her cells in a way where a better version of herself would exist. Essentially, after taking the substance, Margaret Qualley's character becomes part of the story and becomes this younger version of herself that essentially takes her old job, getting hired by Dennis Quaid. And he plays this sleazy executive named Harvey, which I think was on purpose.
You think?
And the way they shoot him is amazing. It's these amazing close-ups, just right on the schnoz.
It's very David Lynch.
Very David Lynch.
Yeah.
This movie wears its inspirations on its sleeve 100%. There are so many nods to other horror movies all throughout.
The Shining.
And its shooting style is very Kubrick and David Lynch and just so many others. Cronenberg, obviously. Some movies try to be subtle with their influences. This one doesn't at all, but it still works. It doesn't take away from the artistic merit that Coralie Forget is putting into this movie. She did an amazing job. The color palette, the visual style of this movie, the shooting style, the color palette, the cinematography, the set design, every moment of this movie, every artistic choice in this movie, it amplifies as the movie goes along. It gets crazier and crazier, and you're just like, what am I watching now? What is happening now? But it's entertaining for 2 hours and 20 minutes, which is very long. Going into this movie, I was very worried that we were about to sit down for 2 hours and 20 minutes of body horror, and if it goes sideways and isn't an entertaining story, that could be torture. And it was amazing. So would I recommend this movie? I would recommend it with the caveat that we're gonna get into the spoiler section. I have some issues with the script and the story, so I do tell everybody that I've recommended, hey, I don't think it's a perfect movie, but it's a movie that anybody who calls themselves a horror fan really should see. So many movies want to say they're original and unlike anything else, and an experience that you can't have unless you're seeing this particular movie. It lived up to that in so many ways that other films just wish they could. But I gotta say, it's a body horror, so if you're not up for that kind of thing, you're not gonna like this movie. It really pushes the boundaries in that realm.
As a word of caution for this movie is, you have to buy into it right off the bat. Once it gets going, it goes to places that you'll never be able to guess where it goes. You could laugh at it, or you could be like, holy shit, that was insane. Or you could find it very terrifying by the end of it. But whatever your outcome of it is, you will definitely be able to say, I've never seen anything like that. So I highly recommend this movie. Not just the Halloween season, it's just a fun ride. It's very, very energetic. It's very creative. It's full of great performances, wonderful direction. It's got everything. And I agree with John. It's one of the best body horror movies ever.
The perfect self is spawned out of the back of the original, or as they call it, the Matrix, right?
The Matrix, yeah.
The Matrix being, the original being, their back splits wide open, and the perfect being grows out of that. Now, before that moment happens in the movie, we have a callback or a scene inspired by Possession. If you've ever seen the film Possession and her total freak out in the subway tunnel, that's very reminiscent of how Demi Moore's character is acting.
She reacts to taking the
substance, and just before Margaret Qualley's character, which is the perfect being, or the better self, emerges from her back. It's a very painful and grotesque scene. And that happens pretty early in the movie, and it seems like, oh, there's where everyone's claiming this movie is a wild body horror. No, that was nothing at that point. They remind you, this very mysterious organization that provides the substance. You learn nothing about them.
Nothing.
It's very vague, but the movie handles it in a way.
I'm happy about that.
Yeah, if you buy into this movie's realism or lack of it, you can accept how the substance is provided. The way it works is you can only be one of the beings for every 7 days. And it reminds you that you are one. So whatever, if you mistreat yourself, it's going to have an effect on the other one. So you better follow the rules. And there's very simple rules, the main one being that you switch bodies every 7 days. Demi Moore's body is unconscious, left on the floor of the bathroom by Margaret Qualley's character. She goes out into the world and lives her life for 7 days, but
intravenous feeding.
They're intravenous feeding, which also plays into some of the disgusting moments. But after the 7 days, you will just pass out and you'll both die if you don't actively make sure you switch. And obviously, very quickly, Margaret Qualley starts fucking around with those rules and has major consequences on Demi Moore's character. So Demi Moore does some fucking around that has consequences on Margaret Qualley's character. Early on, one of the most disgusting scenes of the entire movie involves nothing to do with flesh and blood unless you're talking about shrimp flesh. It is a scene where Dennis Quaid is firing Demi Moore, so in the first 5 to 8 minutes of the movie, and he's just chowing down on shrimp, and they shoot it so close to his mouth.
And so fast and manic.
And just watching all this shrimp flesh get ripped into his mouth. And
it's the sound design.
The sound design, the crunching. He's sucking on cigarettes at the same time while he's eating. His lips look like an asshole as he sucks on his cigarettes.
It's inevitable. At 50, well...
Here you go, Dennis.
It's a combination of just being a director knowing exactly how these scenes should come off. So it's shot perfectly, it's edited perfectly, and then the sound design's perfect for those kind of grotesque moments. Like you can tell that it was all synced together to with one vision in mind on how you wanted to shoot those. And I think the whole movie was like that. The issues I have with the movie, John, I think we talked about it. Essentially, she births another body out of her back, but it's not her. And they don't actually even know what each other are doing. So I kind of got confused as to why somebody would want to take the substance, because it's not a younger you. It's a different person with their own motivations, their own personality. I don't get how you're living vicariously through this person because you don't even know what they're up to. I thought it would have been better had they shared memories or something.
That's the only thing that would have made sense. I didn't understand it either. I thought as soon as they set this up, and they kept reiterating when they were explaining the rules, and one of the main things there's not much they tell you before taking the substance, which again, if you were taking this movie seriously, I would have a lot of questions about anybody doing that. Our friend Josh put it in perspective at the end of this movie when I asked questions like, "Hey, how did the new me get a job? She doesn't have a social security number or any way to collect a paycheck." And he's like, "Those kind of things don't exist in this movie. They don't have social security cards in the world that this movie takes place."
You get an envelope and a phone call to go into this weird security futuristic door that belongs in this
but it only opens halfway
beat down alley, and then you go inside and you get your substance, and there's hardly any manual as far as what you're supposed to do.
No, but the one thing they do reiterate so often is you are one. They keep saying you are one.
Yeah.
So that feels like something that you really, you better not forget that, and that's going to play into this movie. For that first 7 days, I thought, okay, when she wakes up, she's going to know all this stuff.
I thought so too.
And especially because one of the first things that Margaret Qualley's character does, I guess we have names here. Sue is her character.
Sue and Sparkle.
What is it?
Liz Sparkle or something.
Yeah, Elizabeth Sparkle. Such an 80s name. Sue, who goes out into the world, her first thing she does is go and get the old job that Demi Moore had. I thought she was setting this up for revenge, that she knew she wanted to get back at Harvey and the terrible producer, and they don't really know each other.
No,
they don't.
Old Sparkle doesn't even know she's doing that.
Yeah, it's more about the consciousness. I don't fully understand how this movie didn't find a way to make that part of the story, because it didn't.
Yeah, it would have been a little better if they shared a consciousness where when Sparkle, older lady, wakes up, she's like, "Oh, why did you do that?" Blah, blah, blah. But they don't know what each other are doing.
Yeah.
But there's something there that she did levitate to go and get this aerobic show job.
Pump the arms like you're in the mud. Shoulders down, chest open. Tighten your stomach.
So there is a link, in that regard, where she's oh, I think I need to go do this. I mean, as interesting as this movie is, it would have been a little bit more interesting had they shared a consciousness.
Yep.
Where when one wakes up, the other is like, "What the fuck? Why'd you do that?" But instead, they don't know what each other are doing, so they're two completely different people. So why would you take it?
from like a plot-driven screenplay, I take major issue with that. And I'm a big plot guy. I want a plot to make sense. And this movie didn't totally work on that level, but it worked on so many other levels that I was able to forgive that.
They start abusing the shit out of the substance. They're both completely, well, there's a point where the younger one is just stealing the spinal fluid out of old Sparkle, to the point where old Sparkle ends up looking kind of like a combination between me and John here.
What are you talking about? We look great.
And this is where Demi Moore really shines. The makeup that they put on her, where she just looks like an old...
Look who knows so much, huh?
You know, she just gets more and more decrepit and old, and that's where she really
looks like
shines.
Glenn Close.
That's when her acting really starts to come alive for me. When she's not just like kind of a quiet character, where she's freaking out and she's got the makeup on and she becomes so animated in the movie.
If you do the proper 7-day thing, the spinal fluid will keep regenerating, so it's not an issue. There's enough to continue to do the 7-day thing for who knows how long. They never explain.
I had no idea a human had so much spinal fluid in their body.
Sue wants to abuse this and is offered the chance to be in the New Year's Eve show, be the host of it. And it's 3 months down the road. She's gonna have all this press and all this stuff. So she can't do the 7-day thing anymore. They need her constantly to be available to do Hollywood work, you know, interviews
Which we knew
and
was
whatnot.
coming.
Yeah, we see this coming in the screenplay. So she basically says, fuck it, I'm gonna take enough spinal fluid to get me all the way to the New Year's Eve show. So she's basically depleted almost everything from Demi Moore. Well, before that though, we get to see her go to rehearsal and start to deteriorate at rehearsal, where her teeth start to fall out. She looks just like this.
This is where the movie becomes a comedy, pretty much.
Yes. She takes it for a second time, so now it's a copy of a copy. The Elephant Man combined with the Fly, combined with the Thing.
It's got like Demi Moore's head on the back of her shoulder.
Society, if you've ever seen that film, The Shunting.
It's like Toxic Avenger, almost, you know?
So all of those disgusting characters, think of all those if you've seen every single reference we just made, and then squish them together like a mound of Play-Doh. That's what this thing is. Cuts out the face of a giant portrait of Demi Moore from her wall, and sticks it like a cheap kid's Halloween mask with a string on her face.
And also tries to put on like the sexy outfit.
Oh, and puts on the sexy outfit that she's going to wear to host the New Year's Eve show.
But she's now like 600 pounds.
And goes walking down Hollywood Boulevard to her performance. It's amazing.
You love me. You really love me.
You like me. You like me.
And then the blood just starts spraying everyone.
Well,
not a tail,
no, at
something.
one point they destroy her head with something. I forget what they hit her with, but
so they're all like, "You evil!" Like
they turn on her.
Like a mob.
But it takes a long time. But then, yeah, it just turns into the most ultimate bloodbath. I honestly think they were trying to one-up the Evil Dead remake and any other film that in the last 10 years has been like, we're going to be considered the bloodiest movie to ever be on screen. This one seriously bathes the hallways in blood. Literally every wall in the
that's
studio.
where you get your big shining scene.
And another Shining reference. Let's talk about the chicken.
Let's talk about the chicken. Let's talk about the chicken, John.
Well, this is a perfect segue because we've got Charlie Harper here. So we're going to talk about some Margaret Qualley ass.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about here. And at one point, she thinks she sees something moving in her ass while she's on TV twerking and doing her workout. And she's like, I hope nobody else fucking noticed that thing moving in my ass. Because they got some close-up lenses over here that they're using, and the director of their workout video stops everything and says, "Hey, everybody, let's all, the entire cast and crew, go over to this monitor and see what I saw, because I saw something strange, and we got to see what it is."
Can I just say, John, I've given a woman that kind of a bruise and that kind of a welt on her backside before. Just say, yeah.
You've given her that kind of bone?
I have.
Bone in her ass before?
Absolutely,
Oh,
John.
I'm sure you have.
Absolutely.
She has a moment where she reaches into her own belly button and moves around till she finds what was. Oh, she shifts the chicken leg that's in her ass.
She pulls out a chicken leg,
up
John.
to her stomach and reaches into her belly button and pulls it out. And that part, I guess, is supposed to be a dream.
What's a dream, John? What's a dream? What's not a dream? It doesn't matter. I've pulled many chicken wings out of my ass before. It's fine.
I believe that.
Fine.
just leaves it around the apartment. I forget what the
Yeah,
situation
something like
is with
that. Yeah. It's like a voodoo doll type.
There's
thing.
there's disgusting food shots all throughout this, and it starts to rot everywhere. They just find every aspect that they can to be disgusting. Every angle that they could approach something and make it more gross and disgusting.
Agreed.
This movie finds a way to do that.
Winning.
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 Tiger's blood.
I don't know, man. I was banging 7-gram rocks and finishing them because that's how I roll. I have one speed, I have one gear. Go.
Hollywood Walk of Fame. It is showing the creation of a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It's Elizabeth Sparkle's star. I believe time frame it's being put into the movie in like the early 80s. And we see this time lapse of the effects of just time, 30, 40 years take on on her star sitting there on Hollywood Walk of Fame. You see people walking over it. You know, in the beginning, people are showing respect to it. People are taking their photo and interested in, oh, look, we're at the star for Elizabeth Sparkle. But as time goes on, she's kind of a forgotten, fading star. And literally we see the concrete start to crack and her star fading. And they eventually end that little montage that starts the movie with somebody walking by with their food and they accidentally drop it. It's just splattered all over. It looks like blood. It's like pasta sauce. And then that comes around to the very end. Do you want to describe what the final moments of the movie are after monstrosity leaves the theater?
Oh, I want to give a quick little fun story real quick. That I've actually been to the Hollywood Walk of Fame and been right there at that star. And I was hanging out with Corey Feldman, and I believe that night we both defecated on that star.
I believe that for sure.
But the end of the movie, yes, the end of the movie. It's probably the only CGI I want to say in the movie because it's we've been following this Demi Moore. I love you, baby. Demi Moore's her head is on the back of this thing that we've been talking about earlier. Now the thing has exploded and it's all over the place, but this head is still sort of its own little thing. Not the world's best CGI, especially it takes you a little bit out. A little bit jarring because so much of it's been just like amazing, practical gore and disgust. But we do see her slimy face. Yeah, and it goes and it rests on the star, and that may or may not have been before or after I defecated on it with Corey Feldman.
The street cleaner basically drives over it, so we kind of get a similar shot to the way it started, where someone's just passing right over it and not showing it any respect, but obviously cleans off the remnants of what was Demi Moore.
Yes.
There's a little bit of the effects work that I would say is not exactly on par with what The Thing and The Fly do.
You had me at rubber, John. You had me at rubber.
That's for sure.
Speaking of substance, John, I was literally. I
don't want to hear about your substance abuse, man. Seriously.
I was Martin Sheen 45 minutes ago. I don't know what this substance is doing to me, John.
Take another one and you can be Emilio.
Oh, better version of me. Better version.
Well, he's the version without AIDS.
Thanks all you cinema drunks for joining us once again for the 9th annual Cinema Gulp Halloween Mixer. Unpleasant dreams.